The day before he entered Jerusalem for the last time, Jesus stopped in to see his old friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, in the suburb of Bethany. They were a family dear to his heart, two sisters and a brother who seemed to think of him as a brother too. He loved them, John tells us, although he does not tell us why. Maybe there never is a why to love. They called him Lord, so they knew who he was, and yet they were not his disciples, or at least not in the formal sense. They were his friends, the three people in whose presence he could be a man as well as a Messiah. Just a short time ago, Jesus had worked a miracle at their house. Lord, he whom you love is ill, the sisters had written him, and he had crossed the Jordan to come see them, knowing full well it was too late. Then, after Jesus, the man, wept in front of his friend's tomb, Jesus, the Messiah, shouted him out of it and restored Lazarus to life. Now he has returned to them with the chief priest hot on his trail. Chatting with Samaritan women is one thing, and healing the blind on the Sabbath is another, but reviving corpses is something else altogether. By raising Lazarus from the dead, Jesus had made it to the top of the religious right's most wanted list. His days are numbered, and he knows it. When he arrives at his friend's home in Bethany with his disciples, they can see it on his face. So they take Jesus in and they care for him, shutting the world out for this one night at least. They make him supper, all of them chopping up things for the stew while he sits and watches them. Martha is in charge, of course. The others do what she tells them to do. Lazarus is still clumsy from his 4 days in the tomb, handling the paring knife like a tree saw and staring at the potato in his hand as if he had never seen one before. So Martha notices this and gives him a wooden spoon instead. His job was to stir. She said, stir. Mary, meanwhile, has slipped away, gone to find something in her room. Martha is used to this. Mary is the moody one who disappears sometimes, even when she is sitting right there with everyone else. A certain look comes over her face as if she were listening to something no one else can hear. Martha knows that there is nothing to be done about it but to work around her, being careful to reel her back in when she drifts too far. Finally, supper is on the table, and they all sit down to eat, sharing their hopes and naming their fears. Lazarus sits near his friend, unaware that he himself is the cause of all this concern. A trade has occurred, and he does not even know it. Jesus was more or less safe as long as he stayed across the Jordan, beyond the reach of his enemies in Jerusalem. But by returning to Bethany to save his friend, he has signed his own death warrant. Practicing what he preaches, he has traded his life for the life of his friend, unless he can find a way to escape the net that is drawing in around him. No one notices that Mary has gone again until she comes back, holding a slender clay jar in her hands. Without a word, she kneels at Jesus' feet and breaks the neck of the jar, so that the smell of spikenard fills the room. A sharp scent, somewhere between mint and ginseng. As everyone in the room watches her, she does 4 remarkable things in a row. First, she loosens her hair in a room full of men, which a respectable woman never does. Then she pours balm on Jesus' feet, which is also not done. The head, maybe, but not the feet. Then she touches him, a single woman caressing the feet of a rabbi. Also not done, not even among friends. And then she wipes the salve off again with her hair. It is totally inexplicable, the bizarre end to an all-around bizarre act. Most of us are so moved by the scene that we overlook these eccentricities, or else we do not care about them. The point is that she loved him, right? But we also tend to confuse this account with the other 3 in the Bible. 1 each in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In the first 2, the woman who anoints Jesus is an unnamed woman at Simon the leper's house, who pours nard on Jesus' head. And in the third, she is a sinner, a woman of the night who washes his feet with her tears and covers them with kisses before rubbing them with oil of myrrh. Only in John's account does this woman have a name, Mary, and a relationship to Jesus. She's not a stranger, not a sinner, but his longtime friend, which makes her act all the more peculiar. He knows she loves him, he loves her too, so why the public demonstration? This odd pantomime in front of all their friends. It is extravagant. It is excessive. She has gone overboard, as Judas is quick to point out. Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? That is what he wants to know. A day laborer and his whole family could live a whole year on that much money. And here she has blown it all on your feet, for God's sake. It reminds me of those wine auctions you read about. Fabulously old bottles of Chateau Lafite Rothschild discovered in some castle cellar, sold for thousands, even millions of dollars. These treasures are not bought to be drunk, however. They are bought to be kept and admired, maybe sold again. Precious substances to be saved, not used. Heaven forbid that anyone should uncork one and pour it out, not even for the Last Supper. Leave her alone, Jesus says, brushing all objections aside. She bought it that she might keep it for my day of burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. Now that is about as odd a thing to say as anything Mary did. Here is the champion of the poor, who makes a regular practice of putting their needs ahead of his own, suddenly pulling rank. Leave her alone. Leave me alone. You have the poor to look after until the end of time. Just this once. Please look after me. Let her look after me, because my time is running out. Whatever Mary thought about what she did and whatever anyone else in the room thought about it, Jesus knew it was a message from God. Not the hysteric ministrations of an old maid gone sweetly mad, but the careful act of a prophet. Everything around her smacked of significance. Judas, the betrayer challenging her act. The flask of nard, wasn't it left over from Lazarus' funeral? Out in the yard, a freshly vacated tomb that still smelled of burial spices, waiting for a new occupant. The air was dense with death. And while there may at first have been some doubt about whose death it was, Mary's prophetic act revealed the truth. She was anointing Jesus for his burial. And while her behavior may have seemed strange to those standing around, it was no stranger than that of the prophets who went before her. Like Ezekiel, who ate the scroll of the Lord as a sign that he carried the word of God around inside of him. Or Jeremiah, who smashed the clay jar to show God's judgment on Judah and Jerusalem. Or Isaiah, who walked around Jerusalem naked and barefoot as an oracle against the nations. Prophets do these things. They act out the truth that no one can see. And those who stand around watching either write them off as crazy or fall silent before the disturbing news that they bring from God. When Mary stood before Jesus with the pound of pure nard, for a moment, just one moment, it could have gone either way. She could have anointed his head, and everyone there could have proclaimed him king. But she did not do that. When she moved toward him, she dropped to the ground and poured the salve on his feet, which could mean only one thing. The only man who got his feet anointed was a dead man, and Jesus knew it. "Leave her alone," he said to those who would have prevented her. "Leave her alone." So Mary proceeded to rub his feet with ointment so precious that its sale might have fed a poor family for a year. An act so lavish that it suggests another layer to the prophecy. There will be nothing prudent or economical about the death of this man, just as there was nothing prudent or economical about his life. In him, the extravagance of God's love is made flesh. In him, the excessiveness of God's mercy is made manifest. This bottle will not be held back to be kept and admired. This precious substance will not be saved. It will be opened, offered, and used at great price. It will be raised up and poured out for all humankind, emptied to the last drop. How will it happen? When will it happen? Can anything be done? No one in the room knows the answers to those questions yet. The storm is still brewing in the distance, but Mary has given them the forecast. It will be bad, very bad. But that is no reason to lock up their hearts and head for the cellar. Whatever they need, there will be enough to go around, for there is nothing frugal about the love of God or about the lives of those who serve him. Mary got the message and acted on it. While some of those standing by thought her mad or smitten or, God forbid, wasteful, at least she and the one whose feet she rubbed suspected the truth. Where God is concerned, there is no need for fear of running out, of nard, or of life, either one. Where God is concerned, there is always more. More than we can either ask for or imagine. from our lavish